Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you. I'd like to, the hour of 9:45 having arrived, I'd like to call the Kane County Board meeting of October 10th, 2017 to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Allen. Auger. Guerrero. Dahl. Davis. Fraz. Gillum. Hernandez. Hoshite. Ishmael. Kenyon. Kazarik. Leonard. Lewis. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. Smith. Sterrett. Thomas. Wegman. Winnicki. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. I'd like to ask Chief Deputy Auditor Mariola Oscarson to come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mariola has just joined us in the Auditor's office. She is a CPA. We're very fortunate to have her with us. She served for 8 years with PwC or PricewaterhouseCoopers, married to Stephen, another excellent accountant, 2 lovely daughters, 4 years old, 1 year old. Mariola, welcome.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you'd remain standing, please. I'd like to ask Father Carlos Salagumba from St. John Newman Catholic Church in St. Charles to come to the microphone to lead us in prayer.
Praise to you, Father of all. Bless us as we gather for guidance. Mold our minds and hearts so that we will know the needs of our community and strength to make wise decisions for the benefit of all. Do not let self-interest and greed influence us, for you have chosen us to serve your people, you established. Glory be to you, Father of light, living as Lord and ruler forever. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father. Okay, I'd like to welcome State's Attorney Joe McMahon to the meeting. Good morning, Joe. And again, we wish our County Clerk, Jack Cunningham, the best as he continues in his recovery. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from September 12th, 2017 meeting? So moved by Ms. Allen, second by Mr. Fraz. Are there any thoughts, comments, or changes? If not, all those in favor of approving minutes say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes. I'd like to move the Metro presentation until after the speakers on agenda items, the zoning petitions, the consent agenda, and other resolutions, but before the appointments and executive sessions. So with the indulgence of the board, I'd like to go to the next order of business, which is speakers on agenda items. I don't believe that we have any other than on petition. Is that correct, Christy? Is that correct? Okay. Okay, so next on the agenda, I'd like to ask Development Committee Chairman Kurt Kazarik to rise, discuss, and make a motion to approve each of the zoning petitions on today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Petition 4427 is located within Elgin Township. It is a proposed special use request in an F district for a parking for an adjoining business zone property special use, in a B3 business district for a retail sheet metal shop, and a special use in the B3 business district for non-hazardous storage. It is in conformity with the 2040 plan. There was one area objector. The recommendation of the zoning board was for approval. The development committee also unanimously voted for approval. I'll make the motion to approve today.
So moved by Mr. Kazarik, second by Mr. Leonard. Are there any comments or questions?
Petitioner has signed up to speak if anyone had any questions.
Okay, would the petitioner like to address?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Robert Smith. I'm actually the attorney for the petitioner.
If you'd say your name and then address.
Robert Smith, 1021 Howard Street, St. Charles. I'm the attorney for the petitioner. I don't think there's a lot that I would add to the presentation that was made by staff at the committee. I just want to emphasize that these particular special uses are essentially uses that were being conducted on site under a misapprehension of the prior zoning. So it's been kind of, this is actually seeking a continuation of what's been there for over 30 years. And if there are any questions, I'd answer them. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, any comments? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Barrero? Yes. Dahl? Yes. Davis? Yes. Franz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Kazarek? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. And Winnicke? Yes.
Okay, the motion carries.
Our next and final petition is petition 4428, located in Blackberry Township. It is proposed rezoning from an F district farming to an E1 district estate residential with a lot with variance request. It is in conformity with the 2040 plan. No objectors recorded. The recommendation of the zoning board was approval of zoning and variance request. The development committee made the same recommendation. I'll make the motion to approve today.
So moved by Mr. Kozarek, second by Mr. Franz. Any questions or comments?
The petitioner is here to answer any questions.
Okay, if there are no questions or comments, clerk will call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Barrero? Yes. Dahl? Yes. Davis? Yes. Franz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Kazarek? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin? Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Winnicke? Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Kozarek. Now, resolutions and ordinances. Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mr. Dahl?
17-296, please.
So 17-296, Mr. Dahl. Okay. Others? Mr. Smith?
17-271.
17-271, Mr. Smith. Ms. Thomas?
17-278 and 279.
17-278-279, Ms. Thomas. Mr. Sanchez?
17-304, 305, 306, and 307, all related to Long Meadow.
Okay, 17-304, 05, 06, 07, Mr. Sanchez. Any others? Ms. Barrero? 17-296 has already been. Ms. Barrero, number 276. Any others? If not, may I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of 17-271, 276, 78, 79, 296, 304, 305, 306, 307. So moved by Mr. Kozarek, second by Mr. Dahl. Clerk will call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Barrero? Yes. Dahl? Yes. Davis? Yes. Franz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Kazarek? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. And Winnicke? Yes. Passes.
Okay, the motion passes. Now, may I have a motion and a second to discuss and pass number 17271? So moved by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Sterrett. Mr. Smith, would you rise and discuss your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an agreement authorizing a resolution between Kane County and the food hub operator PK Enterprises. Apparently, there has been a stall with the agreement and the fact that the attorneys haven't been able to come to a solution. So I would like to make a motion to table this until November.
Okay, it's been so moved by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Sterrett. Any comments, questions? Oh, no, excuse me. Clerk will call the roll.
Who seconded the,
It was Ms. Sterrett.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Barrero? Yes. Dahl? Yes. Davis? Yes. Fraz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Kazarek? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. And Wonicky? Yes. Motion passes.
So the motion passes. Number 17276, Ms. Barrero, would you please rise and present your, or is there a motion to, actually, we first need a motion to amend 17276 on the Joe Onsick, or is there, okay, no, okay. So a motion to approve the fiscal year 2018 draft budget to be placed on public display. So moved by Chairman of Finance and Budget, Mr. Hoshite, second by Ms. Allen. Ms. Barrero.
Since it would be productive to fill the gap remaining and still ask the rest of the county to cut 3.64%, we should restore to the actual amount estimated from 2017 budget of $3,348,000. Rather than to just fill the gap that is most likely impossible for the judicial side to do, I am suggesting the following. We take, now my numbers were wrong on those papers, so I apologize. I did not minus the $600,000 that we already had taken from the property tax freeze. So my suggestion is to take $1.210 million from the property tax freeze fund, that is what is remaining in the property tax freeze fund, and that is $1,210,000. That would leave zero in that fund. The emergency reserve fund, we have $4,900,000 in it. I would suggest taking $3,227,000 from that fund. That would leave a remaining of $1,673,000 in the emergency reserve fund. We should note in 2018 that any overage should be applied to the gap, if there are any throughout the year, as merely a good faith suggestion. Public safety is the issue here. Programs and services that are already paid for by our tax dollars should not be cut, especially if there are funds available, set aside specifically for this scenario, as shown in a PowerPoint presentation by Mr. Onsick back in 2014. And we all got this. You can all go through your records to find it. And on one of the pages it says, Kane County 5-year financial plan, fiscal year 2014 through 2018 working document. The Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund, given the potential of facing a $993,000 deficit in year 2018, if we are unable to cut costs or enhance revenue during these next 5 years, I am proposing that we set aside $1 million in a Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund. This fund will act as an insurance policy to ensure that we will have enough to fund operations through 2018 without increasing the property tax levy. Like all insurance policies, we should not plan on using it, but do everything in our power to cut costs and enhance revenue instead. I add, the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund, the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund would be a new fund. The ultimate benefit of such a fund would be to avoid a property tax increase for as long as possible. Funds would be used to supplement revenue in lieu of property tax increase. The $1 million initially reserved will function as an insurance policy to ensure that there will be enough to fund operations through 2018 without a property tax increase. That is what I read from this document that was created on March 25th, 2014. I add, I do not believe this should affect our bond rating going forward. This was a big issue with a lot of people. These funds were set up for this scenario, since it would not be productive to fill the gap remaining and still ask the rest of the county to cut 3.64%. We should restore to the actual amount estimated from 2017 budget of $3,348,000. rather than to just fill the gap that is most likely impossible for the judicial side to do. I am asking the following. If you look at the GFOA information that was sent to us last week, in one paragraph it reads, and I've highlighted it on the bottom of my page, for a variety of reasons, true structural balance may not be possible for government at a given time. In such a case, using reserves to balance the budget may be considered, but only in the context of a plan to return to structural balance, replenish fund balance, and ultimately remediate the negative impacts of any other short-term balancing actions that may be taken. For a solution, in 2018, we need to truly consider the CPI, capturing the CPI on our tax. In addition to new construction, along with the possibility of fee increases in court services, would be a plan to return to structural balance. Therefore, I make a motion to amend Resolution 17276, restoring the amounts indicated by departments on the PowerPoint on September 26, 2017 column across the board budget cut proportionates. That's my motion. To amend, therefore.
Okay, a motion's been made. Is there a second? So seconded by Ms. Auger. Mr. Hoshai.
Just point of clarification, can we get the specific numbers that you're proposing so we understand the motion?
Oh, correct. Sorry, I apologize. On the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund, it's indicated that we have $1,810,000 in there. As you pointed out, Mr. Hoshai, that we have already taken out $600,000 for 2018. That would leave the remaining $1,210,000 remaining. I propose taking that complete fund, which that is set up for in 2014. That whole fund was set up for this purpose. And then we have an emergency reserve fund, which was also set up at that same time. And that fund has $4,900,000 in it. I propose taking the remaining that is needed to make us whole of $3,348,000 from that. The remaining would be, I apologize, $3,227,000 minus from 4900 would come to a remainder of $1,673,000. Is that correct or not correct? You're shaking your head. In emergency reserve fund.
Okay, is that clear?
Hands up. I think your intention, as I understand it, is to restore $3.348 million to the budget.
Correct.
Using $1.21 million from the property tax freeze fund and the balance from the emergency reserve fund.
Correct.
All right. So it's the amount from the emergency reserve fund would be $3.348 million minus $1.21 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Say that again, John. 3 point what?
come up with an actual number. It's the difference between the 3.348 million and the 1.21 million.
which is 3227.
No, I think that's too.
You think that's wrong?
Yeah.
Do you have a calculator?
I think it would be 2.138 million. So it's 1.21 million from the property tax freeze fund and 2.138 million from the emergency reserve fund. When added together, that would get you 3.348 million.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was the clarification. Any comments? Mr. Hushai.
Over the last 2 months, we've discussed at length our financial situation, and one thing Ms. Barrero referenced I think is critical to our analysis, and that is a 5-year budget plan. If we go back to 2014, Mr. Onzik's 5-year budget program was accurate based on information known at that time, but it didn't take into account significant changes in our revenue stream that we're faced with dealing with now. Number one, we had an annual revenue stream of $600,000 from bond payments made by people who were charged with criminal activity. That has been reduced on a permanent basis to about $200,000 a year, and it may decline even further. So that's a $400,000 annual loss in revenue that was not contemplated. In addition, with respect to the state income tax and our share of the revenue we get from the state, that has been decreased as well, and that was not contemplated. And as a side, that's why we have reserves in place, because if we have unanticipated changes in our stream of revenue that we can't control, we have to have reserves in place to cover that. The budget that was passed by the Finance Committee and the Executive Committee, in my opinion, is fair. It's conservative. It's prudent. It's not an easy budget to pass, and it's going to require us to make difficult decisions. However, it's really only the first step, because as we go forward, we have more cuts to make. We have increasing costs and decreasing or flattening revenue streams, and we can't continue to operate. Ms. Barrero's proposal would make sense if the county was going to exist for one more year. Clearly, we have the resources to cover that. We could take out the funds that she suggested and restore everyone's budget to what they desired. But that's short-term thinking. That's really what the state of Illinois would do. They'd spend the money on hand and then figure out a way to deal with it down the road. And the reason the Finance Committee chose to take the different option and present the budget as we see here is that we're looking at long-term planning. We're trying to be sound fiscally. I would point out that we do have a continued tax levy freeze in this budget, but we're setting off part of that by using a portion of the property tax levy freeze fund. By leaving the $1.2 million in that fund for future years, that would allow us to continue the levy freeze going forward if we chose to do that. So based on that fact, I would encourage you to vote no for the amendment.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Mr. Leonard, would you rise and address your...
Yes, thank you, Ms. Ferraro, for your proposal. I understand what you're asking for. My question to you is, next year you said, let's put $1 million aside to replenish the tax levy fund. Where will that money come from, considering the fact that we're going to have a deficit next year also?
Thank you. I would propose that and I said it clearly in here, any additional revenue, and we always end up with additional revenue in February when all the payments start coming in from the state, then when we get to $1 million on that, then we would put that aside. We also, if I'm not mistaken, we also have a $49 million set aside, and I can't remember off the top of my head what fund it is. It's in the general fund. 50.7 million is in there. That's 7 months to keep us operating for 7 months. We could take from that fund. My key here is to capture the CPI going forward, to raise the court fees going forward, and then we also have to look clearly at all our budgets. We can't just cut immediately. We have to go into this slowly. And if we have set up these reserves for this reason, there's no reason why we are not using it for this. There are many, we are at an excess of 9 months, not an excess, but we have 9 months set aside in IMRF. We only need 7. We have 9 months, I believe, set aside in FICA fund. We only need 7. There's all these other funds that we have done a great job under Chairman Lawson of setting money aside. But now it comes to the time when we need to dip into those funds. I don't think we have a choice. If we cut services to the citizens, then that is on us. We cannot, this is a public safety issue. This is not a dollar issue. This is a public safety issue. And going forward, I see that we will have those funds available. It just is time when everything comes in, when all the checks and balances. I've never seen the exact numbers. I've only seen what we've been given. I've never seen the exact numbers. I'm going off of what we have here on our last presentation that Joe Onzik gave us last week. We have several million that's extra. I think we need to dip into it. I think this is a public safety crisis. Going forward, then we can start talking about, which we should do now. I sat in all the enhanced finance meetings. I watched what was discussed and not discussed. I feel this is a public safety issue.
Okay, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to first thank my colleagues and county staff who have put in the time and effort to weigh the options and present a recommendation to us. You've made our job a bit easier today, bringing us to this point. But I stand to thank my colleague, Ms. Barrero, for putting an alternative before us, because I am not comfortable with the budget as it stands. I don't think that an across-the-board cut is the best compromise, given that some departments came in under budget or presented a flat budget. And I also think that the impact to our public safety departments is too great. Savings in the short term should not be at the expense of public safety and possibly increased exposure to liability. So for those reasons, I hope that we can take one last shot to come to a compromise, which includes smaller cuts and more funds drawn from reserves and the property tax protection fund, property tax freeze protection fund.
Okay, other thoughts, comments? Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Barrero, thank you for putting together such a nice presentation for us. I'm going to do just a quick timeline. In 2017, we added a bunch of positions that we thought were necessary, and basically the budgets that were asked for were the budgets that were given. And all went well, except that revenues came in shorter than we expected, and Mr. Hoshai touched on that. Traffic tickets went from 100,000 down to 60,000. The bond structure changed, and so on. Local share is always a worrisome thing. So when Mr. Onzik saw those numbers not fulfilling the 2017 revenue stream, we all scrambled. And everybody looked to see if there was a little more money that could be squeezed out. I believe we have lists of where revenue came from, an extra $100,000 because from the state transfer stamp when real estate closings occur, because we had more activity than we expected. Everybody looked for those few pennies, and everybody tried to cut budgets, and that was everybody across the board. And then it turns out that for 2017, we're looking at about $400,000 in the hole, and we're planning on using our contingency. Please, everyone, knock wood that we don't have any catastrophes. We can use that $1 million that's left to balance our 2017 budget. Okay, so we go forward into 2018, and we ask everybody to live on about 96.5% of what they did in 2017. 2017 was everybody getting what they asked for, with some problems when the revenue stream wasn't fulfilled. And then looking at 2018, we're saying, can you do this on 96.5%? And that seems to me to be a reasonable expectation, and everyone will try if we pass the budget as we spent months preparing it. Now, I think that there should be a plan for a problem. I already know that the treasurer is going to come to us and say, I came in with a flat budget, you cut me by 3.5%, I can't live with that, I have to do some publishing, and it's mandated, and so he's going to come to finance. I think he already tried to come earlier, and we said, well, wait until we got the budget done. He'll come in and he'll ask for a budget adjustment. I think we all saw the memo that came out from the Merit Commission that said one of the places that they could cut was about $1,000 in psychiatric costs. Well, if they need to go forward with psychiatric testing on people who are coming in to apply for deputies and corrections officers, then they'll come in and say, we don't have enough money to do that, and we can, as a finance committee and as a county, we can measure this. I remember a staff person saying, if there's a fund of money I can come to, I'll come and fight for it. If I have a program that I want to put forward, or if I have something that I think you need, we should do, they'll come and fight for it. And I believe that we should take next year's, the 2018 contingency, we should take any money left over from 2017. With a little luck, we'll have some left from that contingency, maybe $600,000. Toss that into the 2018 contingency, and then ask everyone who has a program that they think is important and that they would have to cut to come and tell us about it. And I would expect that since everyone has said, I will do this 3.5 cut to the best of my ability, if it doesn't pan out that you can live with 3.5%, then come in and tell us about it. And those of us who have watched this process and seen people work to balance their budgets, I think will certainly say, okay, that's a program we want to keep. That's a mandated service you have to perform, and we will have that money and we will dip into it and we will use that. So that's my suggestion. Instead of dipping into our reserves, let's live with our budget and make adjustments as necessary.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. Any other thoughts? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dipping into our reserve fund is really a slippery slope. Once we start to do this, where does it end? We asked all our elected officials to cut their budgets as much as they could, and they all cooperated with us. Next time we ask them to do that, they'll probably tell us, hey, let's just go and dip into your reserve fund, take the money from there. What concerns me is that we are heading down the same path as the state of Illinois, and I don't want Kane County to become the state of Illinois.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. If there are no other comments, questions, I believe that the first vote is on the Barrero-Auger motion. So the clerk will call the roll.
Allen? No. Auger? Yes. Barrero? Yes. Dahl?
Yes.
Davist?
Yes.
Fraz?
No.
Gillum? No. All right. Hernandez? Yes. O'Shea?
No.
Ishmael?
Yes.
Kenyon?
No.
Kazarek?
No.
Leonard?
No.
Martin?
No.
Molina? Yes. Sanchez?
No.
Shefflo? No.
No.
Silva? Yes. Smith?
No.
Sterrett? No. Thomas? And Wonicky? No.
Okay, the motion fails. We have a motion and a second on adopting the budget. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen,
I'm sorry,
On the proposed budget from the Finance Committee.
and amended by Mr. Onzik's,
no.
No, that's not, the amendment on the ONSIC, does that, we're just going to do the budget itself, no amendments.
All right.
So the motion was made by Mr. Hoshite, second by Ms. Allen, to approve the 2018 draft budget to be placed on public display. So, Ms.
I'm sorry to delay the vote. Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Auger? No. Barrero? No. Dahl? No. Davis? No. Fries?
Yes.
And Gillum?
Yes.
Hernandez?
No.
Hoshite?
Yes.
Ishmael? No. Kenyon?
Yes.
Kazarek?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Molina?
No.
Sanchez?
No.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva?
No.
Smith?
Yes.
Sterrett?
Yes.
Thomas?
No.
And Winnicki?
Yes.
10, 11, 12. 10. Passes.
Okay. What was the count of the?
12 to 10.
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Number 17, 278 and 279, Ms. Thomas, would you rise and present? Oh, excuse me. Mr. Hoshite?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move resolutions 278 and 279. Sorry.
Motion to pass 17, 278, 279, so moved by Mr. Hoshite. Thank you, Mr. Hoshite. Mr. Kazarek seconds. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious about these requests. I think this undermines our decision in July to impose a hiring freeze. And as Ms. Allen reminded us, we're looking for savings everywhere. And one of the resolutions mentions budgeting for 2017, the other does not. And so I'm just, I just think it undermines our decision if we're going to just approve every request that comes through.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any other thoughts or comments? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Allen? Auger? Barrero? Dahl? Davis?
No.
Fries?
Yes.
Gillum?
Yes.
Hernandez?
No.
Hoshite?
Yes.
Ishmael? Kenyon?
Yes.
Kazarek?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Molina?
No.
Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Sterrett?
Yes.
Thomas?
No.
And Winnicki?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the motion passes. May I have a motion to discuss and pass number 17, 296, Mr. Dahl? Or would you rise and make your motion? You make the motion, okay. Any other, and second by Mr. Kozarek? Oh, excuse me, Ms. Gillum seconds. Mr. Dahl, would you rise and discuss your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution recognizing National Manufacturing Day 2017, manufacturing, more so manufacturing throughout Kane County, has been one of the many priorities that we at the Jobs Committee have worked on. And with that, this resolution recognizes National Manufacturing Day 2017, where Manufacturing Day is a celebration of modern manufacturing meant to inspire the next generation of manufacturers, celebrated this year on October 6th. Northeast Illinois is a leading manufacturing center whose metal manufacturers generate more than $30 billion in annual revenues and act as a driver of regional economic development. recognition and support National Manufacturing Day on October 6, 2017. Encourages all residents, teachers, and students to join in recognizing the important role of manufacturing in our county and explore careers in manufacturing and related fields.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dahl. Any other thoughts, comments? Let's see, the second was by Ms. Gillum. The clerk will call the roll.
Ellen? Auger? Barrero? Dahl? Davist? Fraz? Gillum? Hernandez? Hoshite? Ishmael? Kenyon? Kazarek? Leonard? Martin? Molina? Sanchez? Shefflo? Silva? Smith? Sterrett? Thomas? Winicky?
Motion passes. May I have a motion and a second to pass 17, 304, 305, 306, 307? So moved by Mr. Fraz, second by Mr. Dahl. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a couple comments. At the last Transportation Committee meeting, I voted against all Long Meadow resolutions, as usual. One of them is about a financial feasibility study, revenue study, and traffic update study that the Stop Long Meadow group, which I'm the representative of here, has asked for in the past. And afterwards, when I voted against it, people asked, why would you vote against it? The reason being is because when Stop Long Meadow was asking for those studies, it was before construction had started. And they were asking for those studies to allow the county to really justify to those people, at least, and the people of the area, why we need to do this, why we need to go through all this expensive construction when it's being so heavily opposed. So that's when we wanted those studies. We wanted those numbers then when it really mattered. Now we're all interested in seeing those numbers, sure. I still vote against it because at this point I'm against the project in its entirety. So I wanted to clear the air. And another thing that I've heard recently is people wonder, well, why do you still get up there and do that? Why do you still keep saying no to Long Meadow? And the reason is very simple. It's because that's part of the reason I was elected. It's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons. I'm fulfilling my campaign promises. And I know that is something that we don't see as much as we would like to from our politicians. So just to clear the air for anybody who might be unsure about why I still do this, even though the project is so far along, it's because I'm fulfilling my campaign promises to my voters, my constituents. And also, I wanted to say, recently somebody alerted me that the company that is doing the financial feasibility study for us, CDM Smith, as far as 2015 is involved in bribing governments in other countries, sure, to kind of sway things in their favor. And I find that very questionable, and it raises some serious concerns that a lot of us have about the process that's going on here. But I don't have any other information about that at this time, so I'll hold any other comments at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sanchez. The last item in that is especially distressing. Have you shared the information that you've come across with Mr. Shadle?
I have not. I will find out if anyone else has, and I will make sure that he gets it.
Something where you're accusing a company of a crime, no matter where it is.
I'm not accusing. It's a document I read that came, I believe, from the Department of Justice, federal agency. So It's not something that somebody just believes to be true. I will forward it if it's not already in possession.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Any other thoughts or comments? Mr. Smith?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Are we going to take all four resolutions at one time or individually?
Is all four together? Any other thoughts or comments? If not, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen? Auger? Barrero? Dahl? Davist? Fraz? Gillum? Hernandez? Hoshite? Ishmael? Kenyon? Kazarek? Leonard? Molina? Hang on. Martin? Molina? Sanchez? Shefflo? Silva? Smith? Sterrett? Thomas? Winicky? Motion carries.
Okay, the motion carries. Next on the agenda is, we'll go back to 5A. That's the Metro 2018 budget presentation. I believe that we have our Kane County representative. Manny, would you come forward? Manny Barbosa. And I believe that you have Norm Carlson, who's the chairman of the Metro Board. So who would like to start? Okay, Mr. Carlson, welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Chairman Lausen, thank you for coming. And the reason that I came is I want to honor the gentleman standing next to me because he is leaving the Metro Board. I cannot say enough about him. You know him very well. And hopefully my sheer presence will testify to how much I respect Manny, how important he was, and what a huge impact he made on Metro. So we wish you very well, Manny, and it was always a real pleasure with you. Difficult choices. That is what the Metro Board faced in approving its preliminary budget for 2018. To achieve the balanced budget that we have, there are cost reductions, fare increases, deferral of capital spending, and service cuts on low ridership trains. Regarding Kane County, there are no service cuts at this time, and construction of Union Pacific's third main track through Geneva is expected to start in 2018. This is a critical project both for Kane County and for Metro, and has impacts, of course, all the way into Chicago. A major assumption in Metro's 2018 budget is that the 10% cut in the sales tax funding will be restored on July 1st, 2018. We are continuing to analyze train services. An area of focus is the late night, very late night trains. And if you can believe this, these trains travel from an outer terminal, downtown, and back out. We have less than 2 passengers per route mile on some of these trains. That is not sustainable. The one that is the closest to 2 is the Burlington route into Aurora. Some of them are below 1 passenger per route mile. The details of the 2018 budget are in the handouts that we are presenting to you. Looking beyond 2018, Metro intends to issue its first business-oriented strategic plan before December 31st, 2017. The public comment period ended last Friday. Also underway are strategic studies that are a fare structure study, a cost-benefit study on infrastructure investments, a station optimization study, a white paper on Metro's value to the region, and technical papers on maintenance of long-lived assets. What is the core issue that we are facing? The genesis of Metro's economic model was determined 40 years ago and is no longer applicable to our current society. 40 years ago, sales taxes were based on a manufacturing economy. Today, we have a services economy. Retail sales were based on brick-and-mortar retail stores. Today, we have an online model. ADA costs are accelerating at a pace in excess of the cost of living. Pension and public benefit costs are increasing in significance within government budgets, affecting funding capabilities for other goods and services. The result of all of this is Metro is facing the most significant financial crisis in its 33-year history. There is a chronic underfunding of capital needs due to the state's financial situation and the intense competition for federal funds. Metro expects to receive only 1/6, 16% of the capital funding over the next 5 years that the RTA study believes is necessary to maintain Metro's system. For the first time in Metro's history, there has been a decline in operating funding. Most of this is sales tax impacts. Thus, Metro's current economic model is unsustainable, and this puts a cloud on Metro's future viability. We share this message with you so that you will be aware of the message that we will be currently taking to the Illinois legislature, as well as our federal delegation. After all of this, some good news. Metra's relentless focus on costs has resulted in, despite the funding cuts through August, we were slightly positive on actual operating results to date in 2017. In comparison to its peers, Metra has the lowest fare per mile. We are roughly 70% of the peer group, the lowest unit operating costs, and the best on-time performance of 95% or better for 31 consecutive months. When you think of the age of our equipment, this is a testimony to our maintenance and operating people. Responses for the procurement of new coaches were due from the car builders last Friday. An RFP for new locomotives hopefully will be issued around year-end. We have a new Chief Executive Officer, Jim Derwinski, who came up through the ranks in place to replace Don Orsino when he retires on December 31st, 2017. So with that very, very quick overview, again, thank you for allowing us to speak, and Manny and I would be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Before there are any questions, I would simply like to take this opportunity to thank Chairman Lawson and the board for the privilege and honor of allowing me to represent Kane County. As I come to the end of my tenure, I can tell you it's been a gratifying, satisfying experience, notwithstanding all the challenges that are inherent in such a complex and large operation, which is crucial to the economic vitality of this region. Much of the satisfaction and pleasure I derive from this opportunity is in no small measure due to the great people I had the opportunity to work with, beginning with Chairman Lawson, who I think is the most knowledgeable person on railroad operations and its budgetary requirements probably in the whole country. This man was born next to a railroad. He speaks, thinks railroad talk all day long, and it has impressed all of us with his encyclopedic knowledge of railroads. So I think Metra, in spite of all these challenges, is in good hands and has an outstanding, very dedicated staff as well, I may add. Notwithstanding all the challenges that we face, I'm very optimistic because of the dedication and talent of the people who are at the head of Metra. I think Kane County has benefited. There have been at least 3 major projects that come to mind during my tenure at Metra. I think Chairman Carlson alluded to one that's ongoing. We're also getting a total bridge rehab at the north end of the county in Elgin, near my neighborhood. We're getting a bridge that's been in need of repair for many, many years, and we're finally getting an added line there, which will make the service more efficient. But basically, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you. I think that it's been a privilege to serve. It's been rewarding, enjoyable, satisfying, and as I come to I was reflecting that I started my service as an assistant state's attorney here in Kane County many years ago, and I guess I've come full circle. I will continue to try to serve presently on the Kane County Zoning Board of Appeals, and public service has been a joy to me. I've had the privilege of serving 18 years heading a state agency, 15 years in the federal judiciary, but serving Kane County has been a particular pleasure to me as I worked with friends, neighbors, and people that I appreciate and admire, and I want to thank you for that opportunity today.
Thank you, Judge.
Manny made reference to the bridge in Elgin. The piers were installed in 1888, the steel in 1906 and 1926. I think we have got good service from that bridge. There are 841 bridges in the Metra system. Over 400 of them are 100 years or older. That is a testimony to what railroad builders did in the past, and we are living off of that. On the bridge here in Geneva, the Northwestern Railroad put piers out there for 4 tracks. There are 2. Guess what piers we're going to be using? Think about that. That is the foresight that you have to have when you make a decision on railroads, because the minimum lives are around 30 years. So when we are making decisions, and Manny has been very helpful in this, we are making decisions that literally affect 100 years going forward.
Okay, thank you. Are there comments or questions from any of our board members? If not, I'd like to thank you, Chairman Carlson and Judge Barbosa. Thank you so much. Okay, and now that time and progress keep marching along, I'd like to go to appointments. I'd like Christy to help distribute the background and the appointment sheet for the next Kane County Metro Board person who we've gone through the process of advice, and now today it's the consent portion of advice and consent. While that's being distributed, I'd like to just describe the process that we went through. We advertised for applicants through press releases and other means. We formed a bipartisan, gender-balanced recommendation committee and posted both the position and the committee meetings. We had also a committee, both board and staff. It consisted of Carl Shadle, Sylvia Wetzel on the professional staff, Mike Kenyon, Bill Leonard, Susan Sterrett, and Deb Allen. We received 15 excellent applications. Key traits that we're looking for: the person needs to know our area needs, know how public systems and boards work, needs to know people, needs to have impact and be an influential type person, needs to be intelligent, have energy, and lots of ideas. We then narrowed to 5 interviews. Any of the final 3 would have just done a fine job. The consensus recommendation to me in the selection committee is the one that I present to you today for your consent, and that's Steve Meserly. Steve has just an outstanding background, and we're very fortunate to have the caliber of people who applied for this position, and then Steve received the support of the recommendation committee. In 1975, he earned a Bachelor of Science in Biology and PE and Health, cum laude with honors, varsity basketball for, I think it was 4 years. Okay, then 1990, earned a Master's of Public Administration with a 3.9 grade point average. He served, as far as knowing the needs of our area, he served as the Executive Director, Chief Executive Officer of the Fox Valley Park District, which serves 4 area counties. So it's important to have a regional perspective. Kane, DuPage, Will, Kendall counties, so 4 counties over those 5 years, demonstrating his knowing the area needs. Also during that time, improved the Moody's and Standard & Poor bond rating, saving substantial tax dollars through lower interest costs and significantly improving the fund balances of that operation. 13 years before that, he served in a 5th regional county as the Executive Director of the Lake County Forest Preserve in Lake County from August of '91 through August of 2004. Again, an eye on service, but also on frugality. Improved the bond rating to capital A to small a Moody's, and then triple A, which is a rare accomplishment, Standard & Poor's, one of the few special purpose districts in the nation to receive those top ratings. Steve also has national experience and perspective to bring national class best ideas, best practices then to our regional transportation system. In serving for 5 years as the San Bernardino County Public Works Group in San Bernardino, California during a time of great growth. Also, he was manager of special facilities in Ann Arbor, Michigan for 5 years, and then also the Fairfax County Park Authority in Annandale, Virginia for 10 years. So Steve has just an outstanding background. He's also been recognized nationally in his profession as the American Academy for Park and Recreation Administration President. He was also the treasurer and served on their board of directors. He was the recipient in 2006 of the Chairman's Citation for Excellence in Leadership and significant legislative contributions at the state level by the Illinois Association of Park Districts. He was also the recipient of 2002 Distinguished Alumnus, College of Business and Public Administration at California State University in San Bernardino. He was the recipient of the Wall Street Journal Award for Exceptional Graduate Level Performance, the 3.9 grade point average, School of Business and Public Administration, again at CSU. And then very importantly, he was the recipient of Boss of the Year, awarded by the American Business Women's Association, Sundowners Chapter in 1989. One of the interesting additional contributions that came through some of the conversations that we had with Steve is that a potential additional contribution is as executive director for nearly 20 years, he may be able to advise and mentor the new Metra executive director. It's a big job. He'll need all the support that we can provide, and I think that with your consent, that'll be provided as our next representative to Metra. And again, in conclusion, I'd like to say that just as 4 years ago when Manny Barbosa, or with Manny Barbosa, we're all looking for trustworthiness, administrative management, budgetary skills, an appreciation and a practice of leadership, and a desire to be fiscally responsible. So, are there any questions, thoughts? If not, may I have a motion to confirm Steve Meserly as our next representative to Metra from Kane County, moved by Mr. Leonard, second by Ms. Sterrett. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Barrero? Yes. Dahl? Yes. Davis? Yes. Fraz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Kazarik? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Welcome, Steve. Would you stand up, please? Steve Meserly. We'll be hearing more from Steve in the future. We do have a need for executive session to discuss pending litigation, settlement of claims, and personnel. So may I have a motion to go into executive session? So moved by Ms. Sterrett, second by Mr. Leonard. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
Barrero? Yes. Dahl? Yes. Davis? Yes. Fraz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hernandez? Here, Hoshite? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Kazarik? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Winnicke? Yes. Motion carries.
Okay, so the motion carries. I don't believe that we have any speakers on non-agenda items, so may I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Sterrett. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you.